We'll be going through the cosmological argument for God's existence, and these are both miracles. Yeah, that's the argument from the universe. We'll be going through the design argument and also the argument from moral. Those have been the three previous Q&As that we've had. Yeah. And now we're going to dig into the miraculous argument for God's existence, the argument from miracles, which is something that I personally really like. I've actually started writing a book on my own about this argument, and yeah, I've been very interested in the existence of miracles ever since I became a Christian, really. And I'm sure were you present on the gospel meeting yesterday in the evening? No, well, Ralph was, and I talked about that then. So basically, what I'm arguing is if miracles, I hope I pronounced that correctly, are possible, then miracles most certainly happen, and from that we can know that God most certainly exists. That's basically my argument. So starting with the first one, I think this is quite evident. There's not really any positive argument for atheism, any positive argument for that God wouldn't exist. What atheists usually do is they criticize religion. They might criticize different arguments that we give for the existence of God, but it's not really any plausible argument for why it would be impossible for God to exist. And so many atheists, include Richard Dawkins, would not go as far as claiming that they know that God doesn't exist. Many believe that it doesn't exist. Many think that they don't see any reason for why they should believe that he exists. But it's very few that would go as far as saying that the existence of God is impossible. And if you can't exclude the existence of God, you can't exclude the existence of miracles, because miracles are really acts of God. And there have been attempts, for example, by an 18th century philosopher called David Hume, who lived here in the UK. He tried to show that we shall not believe in miracle reports. And his argument for that was that the laws of nature are established by universal human experience, and miracles break the laws of nature, and so we have all of human experience speaking for these laws of nature, and when a miracle comes and interrupts that, there's really no reason to believe that a miracle really has happened. It's more probable, David Hume said, that either the person sharing the story is lying or has been deceived or something like that. But the problem with that is that miracles, or both miracle experience and belief in miracles, are a part of universal human experience, or at least the majority of human experience. This book by Craig Keener about miracles states that in 10 countries, including United States, China, India, Nigeria, and some others, about 200 million Pentecostal and charismatic Christians claim to have experienced miracles. That's not a proof that all of them have indeed experienced miracles, but it shows that in just these 10 countries there are 200 million people that claim to have experienced miracles, and then you're only looking at Pentecostal and charismatic Christians, who are not even all Christians in those countries. And that really shows that it's wrong to say that universal human experience would exclude miracles. In fact, David Hume has been criticized by many for doing a circle reasoning. He starts with assuming that miracles don't happen. He starts with naturalism, the idea that nature is the only thing that exists, that supernature doesn't exist. And then, of course, he arrives at the conclusion that you should never believe a miracle report. But if you don't start with that assumption, then there's actually no reason to say that a miracle, if well supported, would be less probable than a natural cause to a phenomenon. So because of this, it's not really plausible to say that miracles are impossible. Even though many seem to believe this, and many seem to want to find a natural explanation to everything that happens, there are in fact a lot of things happening in the world that can't be explained by natural explanations. And so, since there's no argument for why God's existence or miracles would be impossible, we should be open to the possibility that supernatural phenomena do happen. So basically, no reason to assume naturalism, the idea that nature is the only thing that exists. Well, again, I say that because of this, that miracles are possible, which I think is undoubtedly true. Miracles are most certainly actually happen in the world today. And so again, there are many people who claim to have experienced miracles, and several of these reports have actually scientific support in that they're scientifically inexplicable. So there are a lot of medically verified healings. Craig Keener goes through some of these in his book, but I would also like to read some from a book that I've written. It's not published yet. It's called Charismactivism. It will hopefully be published next spring. But yeah, I go through some medically verified healing. For example, there was a healing evangelist in the US called Catherine Kuhlman, who's quite famous. And she welcomed medical verification for those who claim to be healed at her meetings. And one doctor who was convinced that this is actually something supernatural going on was called Richard Overland. He was a cancer researcher. And his baby had a dislocated hip. And this daughter was just 4 months old. And after she received prayer, her legs straightened. And this doctor...
Catherine Kuhlman?
Yeah, that was at a Catherine Kuhlman meeting. And of course he realized that this can't be psychosomatic. This baby isn't really aware of something going on. So it's not that, you know, a placebo effect, that this baby just is convinced that something will happen. Rather, he was convinced that this is something miraculous going on. And so he started to support Kuhlman's ministry. There's a doctor called Richard Kastorf, who's written a book called The Miracles. He writes about 10 medically verified healings. One of them of a woman called Anne Saltz. So she started to have serious problems with speaking, hearing, and remembering. And it was discovered that she had a growing brain tumor. But after she was prayed for, she was scanned again, and the brain tumor was completely gone. And the doctors had no explanation for that. In fact, there's a whole network called the World Christian Doctors Network, which is based in South Korea, that gathers Christian doctors from all around the world, and many of them testify about medically verified healings. One of them is called Jun Song Kim, and he has reported several healings from blindness or partial blindness, or other kinds of visual healings. So one guy called J.W. Ham, he had nearsightedness, and he had that for 16 years. And after prayer in 2011, his eyesight was recovered. So it went from 0.3 on the left eye and 0.5 to 0.9 and 1.0. So basically was completely restored. And there are many other cases from them. Even the Catholic Church have a system of when they want to canonize a saint, there must be 2 medically verified healings to confirm the sanctification of that person. So medically verified healings happen. Or at least, if we should express ourselves more modest, scientifically inexplicable cures happen. Of course, science can't really tell whether there's a supernatural cause to this, because science doesn't deal with supernature. Science only deals with nature, and what science can conclude is that there is no natural explanation to these events as far as we know. Now, a typical atheist response to the existence of this phenomena is that these probably have a natural explanation that we don't know about. So it might very well be that these people who are healed in ways that science can't explain today might have an explanation tomorrow. We can't know that. And I would say that that is not a very strong explanation, since it's unknown. And so if you compare the supernatural explanation, that's very known. It's been given for thousands of years, whereas the natural explanation is unknown. Now, there are some cures that were inexplicable in the past that's now being explained by contemporary science. But such progress historically doesn't guarantee that science will be able to explain all of these cures, especially not the weird coincidences of these cures being connected to prayer. Some of them are actually quite instant after prayer, and so the pain or ailment disappears immediately, and then when they go back to check up with the doctor, they're healed. And it is a problem that for this unknown natural explanation that has always been unknown in these cases. To take an example, in Kenya, there's a woman called Teresa Jebiwot who was cured from...
How can you remember that?
Well, I've been reading. Yeah. Now, she was born blind, and she went to a meeting with a preacher called David Awur, and she was healed, so she could see after that meeting. And she had been going to a school for the blind. She went to a doctor called Agnes Mayo, who examined her and found that she now had restored eyesight, and you can physically or visually see the difference in her eyes. Now, this is similar to something we read in the Bible when Jesus heals a man who was born blind in John 9. So you have this parallel, and of course many atheists will say that, well, in the Bible case, it's just a myth. It's just invented. But you can't say the same with this contemporary Kenyan example. Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. But that's a typical atheist response when it comes to miracles. So what we have is really this phenomenon, and there are many more examples throughout history about this. And to this very day, the unknown natural explanation to a person born blind suddenly seeing again is very unknown. And I think this strongly supports that the supernatural explanation is plausible. Because it's basically saying that it would be more probable with this unknown explanation rather than an explanation that been given for thousands of years. It's basically like saying that, well, there's probably another explanation for the day being bright and warm than the sun warming us up and shining. Because then you're referring to an unknown explanation which really has no precedent historically compared to a known explanation which many people think seem plausible. So this basically an argument for the existence of miracles. I call that the explanatory argument. There's another one which I call the probability argument for miracles, which doesn't necessarily rely on these medically verified healings, even though they can be supported by that as well. This is a book by Dr. David Lewis, who's a UK anthropologist, or English, I guess, and it's called Healing, Fiction, Fantasy, or Fact. He's writing about some charismatic meetings that he attended with John Wimber from the Vineyard Church. And he writes about words of knowledge that were given there about people that they were going to pray for. So John Wimber said the following: there's a woman named Janet who at 11 years of age had a minor accident that's proven to be a problem throughout her adult life. It has something to do with an injury to her tailbone, but now it's caused other kinds of problem, and so there's radiating pain that comes down over her lower back and down her backside and down her legs. It has something to do with damage to a nerve, but it's also to do with some sort of functional problem with the, I think it's called the sacroiliac. That's his literal words. Now, Dr. Lewis goes through the list of information that's provided here by Wimber and calculates that if he just either by some form of natural inspiration or just by chance randomly says things about this woman, and there's no supernatural factor involved, the likelihood of a woman with that condition being present at the conference is 1 to 3 million, which is very, very small. And she was indeed present at the conference. She went forward for prayer and she was healed from this, which also is very improbable, because even if you would give the exact details of this woman and her conditions, there's no guarantee that she will experience a cure from that after prayer, but she did. And David Lewis goes through several examples like this. Now, when the natural explanation that this is just chance, this is just coincidence, is so insignificantly improbable, since we cannot exclude the existence of miracles, since we cannot exclude supernature as a part of reality, that becomes actually very probable. So again, miracles most certainly happen as we observe these things and realize that naturalism has a huge problem in explaining these things, because there are many, many examples of cures and other things happening in response to prayer that are very improbable if supernature doesn't exist, but very, very probable if supernature does exist. I mean, if God exists, then there's nothing illogical with him answering prayer. So that's why I would say that miracles most certainly happen. But some atheists will then say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that God exists. What if there are some other supernatural being doing this? What if it's the devil that's doing this, right? Many will point to the existence of miracles in other religions. Miracles in other religions as a counter-argument to this, and say, well, if the Christian God is a true God, why do Hindus claim to experience miracles, or Buddhist or New Ages, and so on. And when the Christian responds, well, that's probably false spirits and demons trying to deceive people, then the atheist typically responds, well, what if you're deceived by the demons and the Muslims have the true God, or the Hindu, right? But I think the atheist misses the point when this objection is raised. Because when pointing out similar supernatural phenomena with equal support, or at least close to equal support, when it comes to verification, when it comes to improbability, and so on, they're not really arguing for atheism then. They're just decreasing the probability of atheism being true, because you can't prove atheism and naturalism by pointing out that there are miracles around the world. And basically, all the arguments that I've been going through the last 4 weeks are really arguments against atheism. They're not specifically pointing out the Christian God. The first argument about the origin of the universe, it was just arguing that there must be a transcendent cause to the universe, a God that creates the universe. But that could be the Muslim God, there could be some other God. Arguments for Christianity will come the next 2 weeks because they deal more with Jesus and the Bible and so on. So basically, it's not really an argument for atheism to point out miracles in other religions. That being said, I think there are good reasons to believe that the miracles in the Christian tradition are more well supported and stronger in power, and also they seem to be more connected with peace and benevolence compared to what you usually find in paganism or different animistic religions. I've been to South Africa and I've seen the Sangoma religion, and it's quite different. The supernatural things that happen there are usually connected with curses and things like that. But then I would also say that no matter what the source is to a particular miracle, they do suggest that a God exists. Because if you think about it theoretically, if some kind of supernatural being, whether it's a god or an angel or a demon or something else, responds to prayer, that means that a supernatural reality exists. And that supernatural reality needs to be explained. So you either need to have spiritual agents that's been around forever, that makes them basically gods, or if they haven't been around forever, they must have a cause, and they must have been created. And so no matter what you choose, you will end up with God or multiple gods. But the idea of multiple gods or polytheism is problematic in itself, because they would rule out each other. I think it's very reasonable to say that if a supernatural reality exists, then a God who is responsible for that supernatural reality must exist as well. So that's basically the miraculous arguments. That supernatural reality means that God exists.